I've seen down in the comment section a few times now people complaining about the recoil with the Hellcat Pro. Personally, I don't see it. Now, I have shot the original Hellcat, the shorter version, as well as several different models of the Smith & Wesson Shield. Those guns, yeah, they're a little bit snappy. The shorter the gun, the more bite the recoil has to it. For me, the Hellcat Pro, it feels closer to something like the 4-inch M&P or a Glock 19 in terms of recoil than it does the smaller guns like the Shield or the original Hellcat. Part of that is because it has a slightly longer barrel. Part of that is because it has a longer grip. That being said, no matter what, the most important thing is always going to be your fundamentals in grip and stance. If your grip sucks, you're always going to be fighting that, regardless of the recoil reduction system or weapon that you're using. Now, these products from DPM, they can definitely change the recoil impulse from your pistol. I'm not just saying that either. Yeah, DPM sent me a few products to test, but that doesn't mean I'm going to sugarcoat a review. You guys know me, I am brutally honest, regardless of how it affects my relationship with a company. In this case, I'm not being paid or receiving any kind of commission when you purchase DPM products. Also, DPM didn't ask me for anything other than honest feedback. So here we go. Let's go ahead and start with what's in the packaging. First off, we have 3 different lengths of spring. We have a new guide rod. We also have 2 spring cups or retainers. If you buy this set, at first you're probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed. Of course, I'm going to leave a link down below that's going to take you over to the DPM site. If you scroll down a little bit, it's going to give you a breakdown of what each combination of spring and spring cup is going to give you as far as spring weight. This spring system, it's actually really cool. You can go ahead and swap between the 3 different lengths of springs that come with it, using either the short or the tall spring retainer, and that is going to help you go ahead and dial in your recoil impulse to suit you. Now, what spring combination is going to work best for you, that's going to vary depending on a lot of things, including your grip, your stance, and of course the ammo that you use. Right now I'm primarily using 124 grain AAC ammo through the Hellcat Pro, and that's primarily because there was a little bit of a sale on it at PSA. When I ordered that, that was definitely the cheapest that I could find it at the time, but I do actually prefer a heavier bullet. For the most part, a heavier grain bullet, it might move a little slower, but it's also going to have a little bit less recoil to it. I do prefer a heavier projectile in this gun. It seems to handle just a little bit better using 124 grain versus 115 grain. We're talking about degrees of difference here, not night and day. That's important to keep in mind because those degrees of difference, that's what I'm seeing in the difference between the DPM recoil springs. I had to go through quite a bit of ammo between maybe half a dozen different range strips before I started to feel comfortable actually giving a conclusion on this review. I kept finding myself torn on which spring combination actually reduced recoil the most. Starting out my testing, I put the stock recoil spring back into the gun and I went ahead and put like 2 mags through it that way. Also, just to control the test the best way possible, I just have a stock Hellcat Pro here with iron sights and no red dot. What I was going for was a test to see what these DPM springs are going to do to a stock gun straight from the gun shop. The first mag with the stock spring, of course, just as expected. I went ahead and hung up a craft mat in the background so that I could get some sort of point of reference for when I was reviewing footage later. I went through the process of testing all 3 lengths of springs with both of the spring retainers. I recorded what I could, but visually, it's really hard to get a grasp of what's going on. The results visually are basically inconclusive. It wasn't until the end of the day when I got some video footage of me doing some double taps that I actually started to see something that was a little bit different. I think it's the performance with the faster rate of fire that actually caught my eye. Also, I was using the Infinity Target. Use code 360TS for 15% off your next purchase. The Infinity Target is a rubber-like material and it's actually one of my new favorite range items. It may have worked better though for video purposes on this particular video had I used a steel target. Then you could hear the audible feedback of the double tap. So after about 500 rounds of testing, here's what I've come up with. Using the longer of the 3 springs, that's going to be your heaviest of all the spring combinations. That combination is really close to the stock guide rod and spring set, but I felt like When you take a shot, it made the gun dip down further past that 0 mark. That return was what made that spring combination a no-go for me. It's almost like I had to adjust my aim back up quite a bit to get back up on target because the nose was being pushed down so hard. After quite a bit of trial and error, I ended up landing on the short spring with the short retainer. Side note, that combination is also the lightest possible combination out of what's available in the kit. In the end, that's what seemed to work best for me. Not only could I see a slightly more smooth recoil impulse on the video playback, but I could also feel it quite a bit as well. It's almost like I had to start getting used to the gun all over again. Shooting it the same way with the DPM spring as I do with the stock spring makes it almost unmanageable. I think that's why the video footage really sucks and is not showing exactly what it was that I was feeling while I was at the range. I needed to burn quite a few mags through it and develop a slightly lighter grip. Something where I wasn't overcompensating for recoil that I wasn't experiencing. I mean, there's definitely still recoil, but let's put this into perspective. Let's say I take this 10mm M&P out to the range and I burn, I don't know, 50 rounds through it. After that, I grab the 9mm M&P and I put a mag downrange. The two guns, they feel the same in my hand, but the 9mm has considerably less recoil than the 10mm does. When switching from one to the other, you actually really notice that drastic difference. Switching from one to the other may make you flinch a little bit for those first few rounds. You may overcompensate on your grip because you're used to shooting that gun that has more recoil. Now, that's a drastic example, of course, but it's similar in feel and process to what I experienced between the stock recoil spring in the Hellcat Pro and moving over to the DPM setup. If you go ahead and shoot a mag through the gun and then swap it over to, say, the long spring, and you shoot another mag through it, and then you switch over to the medium spring with the long retainer and shoot a mag through it, and then you switch to the next combination, you're not going to feel any difference at all. Every one of them is going to feel the same. You're going to get frustrated and you're going to have a bad outlook on the product itself. On the other hand, if you put that short spring in the gun and then you commit to actually getting that range time in, you're going to start noticing some differences. After you start adjusting your grip, you're going to notice a little bit different recoil impulse. You're going to notice better performance when it comes to shooting at higher rates of speed. That means tighter groups and faster ability to take follow-up shots. You know, at first I was really apprehensive about these springs because they just felt the same. All three of them, no matter what combination that I used, they just felt the same. Once it clicked that I needed to adjust my grip from what I was used to, then I really started to see that difference. Everything started to get smoother, and by adjust my grip, I mean, instead of putting an absolute death grip on the pistol, I had to relax just a little bit and not push down on it so hard. Gripping it that way while having a little bit less recoil was throwing off everything. Basically, once I changed the spring, I had to relearn the gun. Really though, it was all worth it. Now I know a lot of you already know that I'm currently looking for a comp, as well as my other slide is off being ported as we speak. At some point when we're done, I'm going to do a comparison video where I'm going to compare the reduced recoil from using the DPM springs to the comp, as well as to the porting. Before we get there though, I need to test a couple more comps. I need to get my ported slide back here to the house and get a little bit of range time with it so that I can do an actual comparison video. Right here, right now, I can tell you this much though. The DPM springs are staying in my personal carry Hellcat Pro. Totally worth it, every penny. I would not send them back if they asked me to. I do wish I would have been able to get some better footage, something that would have shown the recoil difference a little bit better. At the same time, sometimes there are experiences that can't be captured in video. They actually have to be felt. And that's what I think the DPM recoil reduction system for the Hellcat Pro is. It's an experience that you yourself are going to need to feel in order to truly understand. I'm going to go ahead and give this product my full recommendation. if you can find one, go ahead and order one. You will not be let down as long as you put the springs in and you get enough rounds through it to get that feel for it. Don't sit there and jump between this spring and that spring. All you're gonna do is frustrate yourself. Pick the short spring and enjoy the results. Thanks for watching, guys. That's gonna be it for this video. Go check out all the cool stuff available from DPM, and as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you right back here real soon.